Yep, it's exactly as they showed us right out the gate. Super Mario RPG Remake is a bed of roses, baby. There is so much to love about this remake and very little to dislike. But the one thing I have to complain about is the same thing so many social circles are also complaining about. Ow! But let's focus on the positive first. The graphics in Super Mario RPG are just gorgeous. The Switch continues to impress with first-party Nintendo titles, as that's what Nintendo does. These cartoonish models look lovely, and though stunted, like nearly chibi style, they're pleasant to look at. It's almost like the Zelda Link's Awakening graphics for the Switch. It's like you're watching a bunch of toys play out a story on a screen, but not like, well, Toy Story. Whatever. Now, the Switch is an aging piece of hardware, and even docked the entire playthrough, I did see some frame rate drops along the way. Papo just can't seem to carry on the way he used to could. To go with these graphics is some new cutscenes. Very awesome, beautiful cutscenes. These triple attacks and boss introductions are wonderful. Importantly, they don't overstay their welcome in length. The combat ones are skippable, but they're cool enough and fancy enough to be welcome additions, and I found myself more often than not fully watching them every time. Another excellent thing is how quickly the game gets you in and out of battles. I'm not into farting around on loading screens for battles, just, in and out taking forever. Let me fight them monsters and move on, come on. And this game does a great job in making that happen. The controls are super responsive. I didn't have to burn a hole in my thumb or my palm to get the full effect of sleepy time, so that's handy. And while my thumb is actually a little sore from all the button timing mashing, I had a great time with the combat. I still can't get 30 jumps though on account of, I never got good. That's what the kids say, right? There's some pretty good quality of life improvements going on. You're able to take your booger excavator and point out to me on this map where you want to go. But yeah, that's the thing. You can travel by map without having to just move and move and move like in the original. If you're an idiot like me, they've added a red flag, not, like a red flag, but a red flag to the place that you need to be in the game. You can also use items without having to jump into the main menu. There's an autosave feature, which is always welcome. I really don't have any idea why someone would complain about this feature, this autosave feature, unless just having a good memory to click save is some skill that someone might brag about at some point. I mean, I can't hold a grudge against these folks because, well, I can't remember to, just like saving. Also, given a notification in combat when something is unblockable is really handy, so I'm not just flailing in desperation to try to avoid attacks that I can't. The music in this game is just banger after banger. It does a wonderful job of not stepping on the toes of the original music and instead simply enhances those versions. Sort of like how an oatmeal cream pie is always going to be good, regardless of the circumstances. The script is almost word for word. If one student turned in the original script and then another student turned in the remade one, you'd best bet they're getting zeros for cheating. But this is a great thing because the script certainly still holds up with all of the humor and fun of the original. The pacing in the game is just as incredible as it was before. I would argue that this is one of the best paced games out there. This game and Chrono Trigger, typically the two I think of. It took me about 13 hours to beat the game and complete all the post-game content, and it feels like I didn't play for more than 2, really. Speaking of post-game, the content post-game took me about, again, 3 hours, and I felt it was a good investment. It's definitely fun to go back and fight some battles that you can't just plow your way through. These actually require meeting certain conditions that were much more particular than the original fights in the game, and they were super fun. The new super secret boss is just as cool as the first secret boss was, and I felt a supreme amount of satisfaction in conquering this foe. It wasn't so hard that like a cat couldn't scratch it, but it gave me enough of a challenge that I had to stop and think. So kudos to that post-game content. Here's the only real gripe I had. First of all, platforming in an isometric view for the vines still sucks. And riding the minecart was the first part of the game that I wasn't smiling in. I just did not enjoy that. Really, that thing was about as much fun as chewing gravel, but I bet some folks out there liked it.
My friends need to be punished.
And the biggest issue, the one that I'll refer to in the beginning of this video, and the one that everyone seems to have problems with, is the difficulty. This game really is a bed of roses. It's easier than hitting a hog in the hind end with a handful of rice. With the exception of the post-game gimmick fights, there was very little danger at all here. And the game made huge concessions to make the original easier in so many ways. The party members buff each other. They have these super attacks. Their attacks splash damage. These poor enemies don't stand a chance against the wrecking crew that is your party. I found myself skipping fights and avoiding enemies just to stay under-leveled enough to eke out a little difficulty in the game. And this is the same story I'm hearing from so many people. There is a breezy version of the game which is for kids who basically don't know how an RPG works, and then there's normal, which is seemingly still for kids who basically don't know how an RPG works. I'm kidding, kinda. It's just not as difficult as I would have liked it to have been. And there's no current option for a harder difficulty for the game either. A harder difficulty option is what the game really needed. It's completely enjoyable and it's a solid 9 out of 10 for me. But the hope for and potential for me to play a more difficult version of one of my favorite RPGs of all time was still lingering on me well after I finished the game. It would have been nice to enjoy something that wasn't such, well, you know, a bed of roses.